What is up, everybody? Mr. Purtis here. Welcome to Unit 1, Part 2. This is the second part of our first unit. Connects a little bit to what we talked about in Unit 1, Part 1, but this time period is called the Enlightenment. We're going to look at the causes and some of the main ideas in this, and then Unit 1, Part 3, we'll look at some more ideas from the Enlightenment. So we're going to do two little things in the Enlightenment, a hugely important time period. I'm not sure if you've learned about it or heard about it, but I often like to refer to it as a light bulb going off around Western Europe at the time, which we'll get to in a second. But when I say light bulb, I mean like cartoon character, like the light bulb goes off and everything pauses and they're like, oh my gosh, I just got the best idea. And that's kind of what this is about. And it's easy to remember because light is in Enlightenment. So hopefully that'll help. And here's what we got. We have the Enlightenment is a political movement. And by political, I mean government structure or what governments can do over people. It starts in the late 1600s and it goes really through the 1700s. And it's going to look at what the role of government is. By role of government, I mean, again, up to this point, most governments, like we talked about in Unit 1, Part 1, are absolute monarchies, and people are going to start questioning whether or not that is the best. And a new idea, which really goes back to the Greek and Roman times, which if you were in Global 9, you probably learned about, which was democracy and participation and representative democracy and direct democracy, and all those ideas from that time period reemerge in the 16 and 1700s. And people start saying, hey, maybe we need to go back to the way things were back then, where people had more participation. And what we're going to see as a result of this movement is from when it starts to when it ends is really the beginning of modern democracy. And when you have all learned about this at some point, if you learn anything about the American Revolution, no taxation without representation, live free or die. Those ideas that come from this period of the Enlightenment, freedoms, freedom of speech, freedom of press, Bill of Rights, all of those things comes out of this time period of the Enlightenment. It's hugely important. It really shapes the modern, what we would consider to be like, when I say modern, I mean current political systems in the world and what we expect and what we've all just kind of grown up in knowing and assuming is right. So it comes out of this time period. So here's the causes of it. Number one cause is the absolute monarchies. The governments at the time when the Enlightenment is, when the works or the writings in the Enlightenment happen, are all absolute monarchies. We talked about it in Unit 1, Part 1. Not a whole lot to say, but if you don't remember what absolute monarchy is, it's the monarchs had total control, and we see a lot of this around the world, but definitely in Europe as well. And by Europe, if you don't know Europe, we're talking France, Spain, Portugal, etc. All those countries are going to be absolute monarchies. Second thing that's going to be going on is what's called the scientific revolution. The scientific revolution is a period that's going on right around the time of the Enlightenment, where people are going to start questioning what science is based on. And when I say what science is based on, if you went back to the 1500s in Europe and you had a scientific question, you'd look in the Bible for the answer. One thing that is said in the Bible, for example, in the book of Genesis is God commanded the earth to stand still. There's my hand. One line in the entire Bible that says that, but people interpreted that to mean that the earth is the center of the universe. And if the earth is the center of the universe, everything rotates around the earth. And this is a little picture of what it would look like if we were geocentric, the earth, the center of the universe. People are going to question that. People are going to look at the stars. They're going to conduct experiments. They're going to figure out and make determinations based on math and scientific principles. That it's not the earth, obviously. It's the sun. And that this is really what it looks like. And this is called heliocentrism. And people are going to question that. Now, the people that question that are going to get in trouble by the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church is going to kick people out and say you're going to hell, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a big, bold statement. But really what it comes down to is science. And this is true if you take bio or chem or any other science class. Science is based on laws or scientific principles. And that if I do an experiment and you do an experiment with this exact same situation, we should come up with the same conclusions based on science. Why this connects to the Enlightenment is people start questioning things. If we're questioning the church's view on science, we should also question the government's view on how they rule. And people say that maybe human beings, like science, have certain laws or principles that we abide by, being kind to each other, trying to be better at things, what motivates us, those types of things. So these causes, absolute monarchy, scientific revolution, are eventually going to lead to this period called the Enlightenment. And our OG, our godfather, our main man, the guy who starts it all, he's like up here, like foundation, godfather, whatever, is John Locke. He's from what we would now call the United Kingdom or Great Britain. This is a picture of him down here. He believes his foundation, his basis is that people, you, me, if you're watching this, hopefully you're listening, are naturally good, that we're good people. Like we do bad things. We're not perfect. We're not amazingly, we do bad things, but naturally deep down, we're good. We want to do good. We want to be good. We want people to like us. We want to do what we have to do to be better people. And we also want to improve. We want to get better at what we do. Everything that we do, we want to improve at. He said, if this is true, and if you're buying what I'm selling here, we can also argue that people are evil and wicked. That's a whole different guy. But let's say that you agree that we're naturally good, then you should believe that the best society, if we want to improve, is one where people can voice their opinions. Because the best way to learn and to improve is by interacting with other people. If we don't interact with anyone and we don't learn anything, we will never get better, never improve, and we can't be perfect or as close to perfect as we want to be. He said, as a result of this, so again, this is his logic. This is very scientific. If people are naturally good and they want to improve, and the best society is one where people can voice their opinions, and that's how we improve, then you need a government where people can express themselves. And to him, the best type of government was democracy. And people at the time, smart people, super intellectual, science, like super smart people, are going to take this idea and expand on it even more and say, hey, if we're going to have this government where people can voice their opinion, how much should they be able to voice their opinion? How much should it be limited? What should be the role of everything? And that is the foundation of this period called the Enlightenment. And there's three ideas that I need you to know, three ideas that are really important. One is called the consent of the governed. This word consent, if you've never seen this before, you might have like a parental consent form where parents have to sign off on you using a laptop, or you being able to do this, or you to get a parking pass. Whatever it is that you experience at some point, there's consent. Consent is permission. So this is called consent of the governed. And this is one of the main Enlightenment ideas. And the idea is that rulers, the leaders of a country, in this case, we're critiquing the absolute monarchs, but if you look at the United States, the president of our country gets their power from the people and not God. Up to this point of the Enlightenment, absolute monarchs thought they got their power from God, whether it's in China and the mandate of heaven, whether it's absolute monarch and divine right of kings in England and Europe, people thought they got their power from God, that God grants them the power. This changes. The Enlightenment flips that around and says, no, 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 no. It's not God who gives you the power. It's the people. Power to the people. And even in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, you see a lot about people, about citizens. In the Constitution, it starts with we the people. It's about people, not about God or supreme beings. And people give permission to rule is the idea in democracy, and that is called consent of the governed. The second one is called natural laws, laws of nature. We will do a lot of this in class. There'll be stuff in this in the next video, but these are rights that you are born with, certain things that cannot be taken away by any government. And the concept behind this is there are certain things that should be freedoms for every single person. And if you believe that every person deserves certain freedoms, those are people's natural rights. Or another way of saying it is laws of nature. So they're nature's laws, basically. And when I say nature, I'm not talking about the trees and, whatever. John Locke, coming back, my man right here, the OG, he said that there are three natural rights: life, liberty, and pursuit. Nope, not pursuit of happiness. That's in the Declaration of Independence. Thomas Jefferson changed it. Property. Life, liberty, property. And liberty means freedom. So you have three things that you're guaranteed. You're guaranteed the right to live, the right to certain freedoms, and the right to own property. Jefferson, if you know the Declaration of Independence, switch it to pursuit of happiness for another story for another day, but he did that. Future thinkers are going to add to these. Some people are going to say we have the right to not have the government just walk into our house without a warrant. We have the right to own a gun. We have a right to this and that. So there's going to be other things that pop up. So that's number two. So number one, consent of the governed. Number two, natural rights. Number three is something called social contract. This is the idea that you can have all of these rights, which is fantastic. We all deserve these rights. It's great. But there are limitations to these rights. You don't have the right to do anything you want. And that there is essentially a social contract. There's a deal between us and our government to say, we get that we have certain rights. We get that you're guaranteeing certain rights, but the government needs to limit those rights sometimes. For example, you can't yell fire in a movie theater. You can't threaten someone online. You can't say, I'm going to kill you, and then be like, yo, that's my freedom of speech. So there are limitations to those rights in order to promote order. So we have rights, a ton of them, but at the same time, those rights are often limited in order to maintain order. For example, you can't walk into school with a bathing suit on and no shirt if you're a guy. You can't walk in with a bikini on if you're a female. It does not keep order. It'll become disorderly is the idea. So your rights as a student are limited, which we'll talk more about in class. That's my quick overview. That's the Enlightenment 1.2. We got 2 videos down, probably got about 60 to go, but we're getting there. So any questions, write it down. Let me know in class. I'll talk to you later. I'm out.